Hello everybody, JGC Anime here, and today we're going to be reviewing TONIKAWA Over the Moon for You High School Days, or Tonikaku Kawaii Joshoko Hen. I probably said that wrong, but we're just going to roll with it. To be honest, I wasn't originally sure if I was going to sit down and review this since it's just like a 4-episode special, but after thinking over it, I think I'll just do it. You know what? I'm just going to do it. So yeah, we're just going to talk about this. So without further ado, let's just hop right into this. So what is the plot of TONIKAWA Over the Moon for You High School Days? I'm just probably going to call it TONIKAWA High School Days or whatever for now. The plot is basically NASA has been asked by his previous teacher to come work at an all-girls school and teach them about computer programming and science like that. And so it's meant to be about NASA and his escapades over there while also interacting with his wife and everything else. And yeah, that's about it. Nothing really happens majorly in this story, but there are some nice things and some not so nice things, but we'll talk about those in a second. But yeah, that's the story summary, and that's the best I got. So yeah, let's just move on to the next thing. So in terms of spoiler-free thoughts, I think this was actually a bit better than when I watched season 2 of TONIKAWA. Like, season 2 had a massive issue where it focused way too much on NASA and Tsukasa instead of giving us a good amount of time with the cast. It's not that those two are bad characters. In fact, I really enjoy seeing them together. There are multiple times in this 4-episode special that I really thought, oh man, this is really cute. These two have a really cute and fun chemistry together. But when they're everywhere on the screen all the time, like in season 2, where despite watching 12 episodes, it felt like that was all we were focusing on. We weren't focusing on anything else. It got a bit repetitive. It got a bit boring at times. And while there are still problems like that here in this 4-episode special, we do get a lot more side character developments, which I do appreciate. And honestly, I had some good laughs seeing all these characters interact with NASA and Tsukasa, and it's just a lot more fun when we get to see the cast actually interact with them, especially with all these new characters into the mix, which sadly, a lot of the new characters aren't really important to the plot, but we'll discuss all of that in the spoiler section. But overall, I do find myself enjoying this special 4-episode thing a lot more than I did the second season, as the second season's biggest problem was it lacked any real connection to everyone else. It only focused mainly on NASA and Tsukasa and kind of hinting at the past of Tsukasa and stuff like that. But overall, I just felt like it was lacking in a lot of areas, and I just wish that it wasn't as lacking. But thankfully, this special has a few more interesting things to offer, such as fun little side adventures for some of the characters and really fun interactions that I found myself really getting into. And yeah, honestly, this definitely had a lot more good moments in this for me, especially with the fact that I actually had some really good laughs in this. In season 2, I mentioned I believe that there were some decent chuckles here and there, but there was nothing that was funny. Like, there was nothing downright funny. There was nothing that was really getting a ha-ha out of me. But this 4-episode special actually had quite a few jokes I found myself having quite a good laugh at. Not like something like Mashal levels of, haha, this is hilarious type comedy, but it still had some pretty nice jokes here and there. And while I definitely don't feel like it's important to the overall plot, in fact, barely anything really happens plot related here other more than like 1 or 2 things, I feel like this still had some nice moments. But overall, I felt it was almost kind of pointless because it was entertaining. It was definitely, in my opinion, a bit better than season 2. But when you think about everything that happens, overall, it's just kind of pointless. There's not really much to it. Anything that they do include that's plot related could have easily been saved for like a season 3, but they just decided to put it here, which I don't know why they did a 4-episode special dedicated to NASA working at an all-girls school, but they did. And yeah, it was still a fairly nice time overall. I definitely still think that season 1 is my favorite part of this series, but this honestly wasn't bad. I had a decently good time with this, but yeah. That's all I can really say without spoiling, so we're just gonna hop to the spoiler section now. Here's a timestamp to when the spoilers end. If you have seen the show, I'd recommend sticking around and hear my thoughts, but if you haven't, just skip to the end so you don't get spoilers. But if you have seen it, I recommend sticking around and hear my thoughts so you can agree or disagree in the comments. But yeah, I'm gonna count from 5 and I'm going to enter the spoiler section. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So I mentioned before we actually do get a bit more stuff with other characters, and one of those, which is probably my favorite storyline, is when this girl, I believe her name is Shirogane, wants to confess to NASA's cousin, Ginga, who honestly, that whole interaction between the two of them, especially with how Ginga feels like someone's following him, only to find out it actually was just some punk from another school, and she wants to confess her love, she does, but he doesn't understand it. That whole storyline was absolutely hilarious. I had such a blast watching that, and I kind of wish we got to see more of those types of interactions with other side characters, because while yes, I do enjoy the attention between Tsukasa and Nasa and their romance, it does kind of feel like that's become less about a actual romantic connection and more about padding the runtime, because literally in one of the episodes, we did this whole random side storyline just for Tsukasa to put on a school outfit to get Nasa to pay attention to her, and that felt really random and just kind of there. It felt like it only existed purely just to pad the runtime. It didn't really feel like it played a big, massive role in what was going on in the story, but it was there, and that's not the only case where that happens. There are multiple instances inside of this 4-episode special where whenever they don't know how to pad the runtime out and get it to the end of the episode, they'll just throw in a random Tsukasa and Nasa flirting moment just for the sake of whatever. The only time I truly felt like they were trying to give an actual connection between the two is in the final episode, where Tsukasa realizes, after being told about it, that she doesn't really say I love you to Nasa very often, so she was trying to find the time and way in order to say it, and leading to this really cute, wholesome moment between the two of them, where I actually felt like it was a really nice and cute moment. However, almost every other one up to that point, every other romantic encounter, just felt like filler to pad the runtime in to get us to the end of the episode, because for some reason, despite putting Nasa in a situation of being in an all-girls school and being able to maybe create some plot points here and there, instead they're just like, oh yeah, we know we called it high school days, but Nasa's barely going to really interact with the high school element of that. Like, they do put some attention on it in the first episode, but every episode after that, the school kind of fades into the background, where it kind of just randomly appears for a small bit of the episode, and the rest of the episode is just in the normal places you see the characters normally. And that makes me wonder why the heck they would call this like a high school days thing, because it felt more like just a bit of a sneak peek of a third season, where it just feels like stuff doesn't really have a purpose. Like, the whole school days thing doesn't really feel important. And I think the saddest part of it all is the school actually had some interesting ideas behind it that I really wanted to see executed. But sadly, we didn't really dive much into it. Like how there's this one character called Kaguya, who seems just as smart as Nasa. And it kind of seems to be teasing that maybe she might be connected to Tsukasa in some way, but they don't really dive into that. They kind of just put Kaguya in the background. In fact, we barely kind of acknowledge her at all. She's barely around in the story, and I'm kind of upset about that, because other than maybe some minor appearances here or there throughout the 4 episodes, with the final episode kind of giving us a good idea of who she is, the rest of the story doesn't really dive much into her. In fact, even though she has this whole beginning part of the final episode where we learn a bit about her, it doesn't really add much else to the episode, since most of the episode was all about Tsukasa wanting to say that she loved Nasa. And I just feel like the whole school element could have been cropped out. We could have just had Nasa be a school teacher for one episode, and the rest of the storyline, the school's irrelevant. And it would still be the exact same with everything, because that's just what this story is. Despite being called School Days, it's literally not relevant at all. The whole school element is completely pointless. It has no major play on any part of the story, and I guess that's probably one of my biggest gripes. But it's not like a super big deal. It just was a bit disappointing how I was really hoping we get some interesting school interactions with Nasa and the students, only for the students, just most of them, with the exception of Shirogane, just kind of being pushed to the background and just kind of ignored. I mean, it's not like that's the case with everyone. There's also this other character called Hotaru who has a bit of attention because she talks about Kaguya and stuff like that, but she really only kind of exists to be one of the side characters who talks to Nasa a little bit. And while I don't hate her character, we don't really know much about her to really get a good read on her, or any of the characters really, because despite the fact we have such a unique cast here, it's really frustrating when we don't get to see some of them actually have attention, because sometimes they're actually really fun to follow. Like Ginga's whole storyline with the girl I mentioned before, it actually was really fun to watch. It was actually really fun. It was entertaining, and I wanted more of that, because we normally don't get to see this stuff. We only get to see Nasa and Tsukasa's adventures, at least with the case of season 2. And I kind of wish we got to see more of that with this season, since there were so many really nice moments that I honestly had a good time with. And while this whole special isn't super perfect, I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a good time. I wouldn't say it's the best thing ever. It's definitely not as the same when it comes to quality as Season 1. But for Season 2, it's a bit better than Season 2, but that's about it. I do like the fact that we do get a bit more of Tsukasa's lore in this, where Nasa has a dream where he's in this long ago time period and happens to run into Tsukasa, where for some reason he's being mistaken for somebody else because, you know, it's the dream, and he kind of gets a gooder idea. I don't even know if good is a word, but he gets a better idea about stuff going on in the past, but doesn't fully understand it yet, and ends up finding himself crying, and he doesn't know why, but ends up hugging Tsukasa and all these wholesome nice moments. And I do like the fact that we kind of get an idea of her character, especially with how Kaguya seems to be connecting herself to Tsukasa in a way, although we didn't really get the answer to how or why in this special. But overall, I still had a decent time with it. It was definitely entertaining enough. If this had gone on for an entire 12 episodes, I don't know how I would have felt, but I do find myself finding some fun in these 4 episodes, as it didn't feel like too much, and it just felt nice. It didn't feel like I was being pushed with all this other stuff that I didn't want to see. And overall, I had a fun enough time, and yeah. While not every moment is perfect, overall, it's fun enough, and that's all I have to say. So we're at the conclusion of this video, and what are my final thoughts? It's actually just a fine enough special. It's, even though it's 4 episodes, which I don't even know if you'd really call that a special, but it kind of is. It was fun. I definitely found myself enjoying it more than I did Season 2, even though there weren't as many episodes. I just really had a good time with it. I really liked how there was more character development for other characters, and now we get to interact with all these different people. And while it does feel kind of pointless in the end, I still had fun. It wasn't the worst, wasn't the best, felt a bit pointless, but I still had fun with it. And that's why I give Tonikawa High School Days a 7 out of 10. Fun enough, not the worst, not the best, but I still had a good time with it, and I really enjoyed it. And if you enjoyed Tonikawa, I think you'd enjoy it too. It was nice enough, and I had a good time. So yeah, that's all I really have to say. So thank you all for watching. If you're new to the JGC Anime channel, don't forget to subscribe. I also do anime fans to the channel, and I will see you all around. Peace!